Hey there, and welcome. So this is going to be a little bit of a different video than my usual. A little more vlog style, because I want to show off something I've been working on the last few weeks and get your opinion on it. Back at the start of the year, I did a video about painting journals and why they might be useful. Many people asked me for the templates I had made up, which I provided no problem, but made me wonder if there was a little more of a demand for something more official. Well, for the past few weeks, I've been working on some layouts for a Paintman Journeying style painting journal. But before I go through sending anything to a print company, I want to show off what I have so far and see what everyone thinks. So I'm going to switch this camera around for a better overhead look and run through the layout and my thoughts on why I made the choices I did so far. So to start off, I'll explain how big it is, because that factored in a lot into what I'm trying to do with this little journal. So it's 5x7, which is about a photograph size, and so it's not that big, and it's only 16 pages, which is 4 sheets of paper back to front, and so it's quite thin and quite easy to store with your models, which is what the point was. So essentially, because if you're going to go on the road or take your models with you and you need to be able to look something up, you want to be able to bring this with you. If it's a giant book, then it's a little harder to take with you, but something like this that's thin and small and packed with information, you can just throw in with the case or with your paints or anywhere, right? So it's quite easy to store with the army that you're going to be putting it with. And that's the other thing, as you can tell by the cover here, it's for one faction is the idea. So you would want, they're pretty cheap and pretty small, so that you would have one for each of your armies instead of one large book that you have to keep around. So you would keep little ones as a library and then just take them out based on the army that you're doing. So on the front here, I have the faction name. In this case, I'm going to go with Ratman. You can give them a little army name if you want. Now, the reason I have the points there is because on the inside, I do have spot for an army list. Now, there's more to it, which I'll get to in a little bit, but that's why that's there on the front. And do it in pencil so that you can change it. I have 4 different layouts in the book for now. And again, this is kind of what I want feedback on, whether you want to see more or less, or if this is too much or unnecessary, that kind of thing. So on the front, this is heavier cardstock, just in this print that I did at home. And so that's where I put the mixing grids. So there's actually 4 of them, and I'll explain why that is. So it's bifurcated in the center here. And the reason that this only counts as 1 grid is because if you were to do it out the other side like a square, it would just double up. You would end up with the same mix here and there. So I figured, why not just split it down the center, make this 1 grid and make this another. And so you end up with actually 4 on the thicker paper. I already did some here, but you can see the idea. You would put your paint name in those, and then you would fill in these special looking ones with the paint that paint is. And then from there, it branches. So magenta and orange makes this nice red. Orange and warm yellow makes this brighter orange. So here I have some more mixes done up with the other ones. So this is purple and magenta. Looks like that. Purple and orange. Looks like that. And purple and yellow looks like that, which is kind of just a gross brown. But now that we have this grid, we'd be able to see those colors, and you would do it specifically for the army that you're working on. So if you need to know what certain reds or yellows or greens look like mixed together, because that's what you're doing for your army, this would be a great place to do it. And then because it's on the back, you'd be able to look quickly to see those mixes for other armies. So that's what the mixing grids are for. It's just some place that you can do some mixes and find out how things mix and look when they're dry. Now when it comes to the army list portion, it's actually going to serve 2 two functions, or at least in my mind it does. The first function is just as a place to get quick references to the models that you use. So that's why, you know, it's for one-page rules. I've got quality and defense here. I'm thinking I might do one for 40k, but I don't really know the new rules yet, so I don't know what to be putting in here if anybody wants to help me out with that. Quick things like special rules, quality, defense, and how many points a unit is. The second purpose of it is to actually list out your models. So in this case, say it's a unit of 5 Ratman warriors, and they've got, you know, 3 spears, 1 champion, and 1 musician. Well, if you have, those are options. So let's say you have actually 5 warriors without those upgrades, then I would actually put size 8 with 5 spears, and then 1 champion, 1 musician, and maybe 1 standard bearer. So that way you know what options you have, and then just put the highest total points that you can there for all those options. But or a range, something like, I don't know what it would be, but 70 to 90 for all those upgrades. So something like that. So it's more about knowing what models you have and have painted, thus painting journal, that makes this kind of important. So you know what you've done, what you have access to, and what's upcoming. So I would put unpainted models here as well, which actually just made me think of something. Maybe I should add a little check mark box, right? To say, hey, those have been painted. I'll think about that. Right now I have enough room for 16 units, which is 4 pages with 4 units each. I didn't know if that would be enough. So the way these booklets are kind of made is you want to fill out as many pages as you can, but I only have so many of these pages, which is where all the swatching and painting is going to go. And I'll explain those in a second. So I tried to find the right balance between, you know, how the average amount of units an army has. So I thought 16 would be good, but I can go more if I need to. It would just mean less of these pages or something else. I can probably add another page, as it's quite a thin booklet too. So let me know how many you think you might need, and that'll be really helpful to me. Speaking of our swatching page, this is where the first one starts, but it does get a little weird from here. So right now I have it split and just goes run into the other. But all the other ones, they instead have these notes on the back. And the reason I did that is because we're going to be adding paint to the little X's, which is why they're there. I wanted to make sure that there's no bleed through. And so instead of having X on this side and another X on this side that bleeds through, and so you can see it in this area kind of, I just made it so that it's a single page for each of them. And so that way you're not going to have any bleed through messing up the pages behind them. So that's why I did it that way. And having the notes here allows you to add notes for things that you might have that might be not available to add in these spaces here. So let's say you're doing non-metal metal, you can add the techniques that you're doing. So there's base, layer, wash, so on and so forth. But you might need some extra notes where, you know, it's not metal, so maybe it needs to have a sharp contrast, because normally that's not how you paint, is with that sharp contrast. But that is what the notes is for, just so you can make mention to, you know, things that are different from your normal style. So as far as each of these little blocks goes, what you see in them is it starts with the part. So let's say we're doing some rat pants, and then you start with the first techniques, which will just be the base coat. You would add a swatch to whatever your mix is doing in this X here, and then this little line that comes out behind it is essentially what I was thinking would be a good indicator for whether it's your darkest or your lightest highlight. And so at the bottom here would be your darkest. So this is a base, it goes base. And then if you're just doing a layer, it would go there. And if you only have one more highlight, you would do that. But there's enough that you can do 7 steps between each of them, and then just circle where along that is in there, because you could start with a mid base and wash to get your shade. So it's just a good way to say, hey, where along the process is this color supposed to go? And then down below it, I've got brand, name, and the ratio. So this is where the paint information goes. So let's say I'm doing a highlight to this next one here. So it's the pants, step number 3. Technique is going to be layering. I'd put the swatch there. This is my brightest highlight. And you can either draw a little arrow from your last one if it's going to be the same thing. That's what I was doing with my other ones. I didn't put a spot for it because they're a little too close together, but it's your journal. You can do whatever you want. But then you would put the brand name in shorthand. So I've got Chimera Color for the purple and Joe Sanja for the white. And then the ratio is how much you've mixed one into the other. In this case, I'm going to do more white, so maybe 2 parts white to 1 part purple. And then you would swatch that from your palette to make sure that you have something to reference. And then you can do that as in many steps as you want. And then when you get to another part, you can either just start that in here if you're not too bugged, or block this out or scratch it out and start there if you're a little bit particular about how you want to do it. So there's currently 5 pages of those with the 4 pages of notes. This back one is again on the heavier grade of paper. So now that you've seen what I have so far, let me know what you think. Maybe there's more that can be done, maybe less. The idea is I want to eventually do a Kickstarter for these painting journal booklets. So that's why it's going to be important to get your feedback now so I can make them the best they can be within my skill set. So throw everything you've got at it in the comments, and let's make this something worthwhile for everyone working on a painted army. And I'll make sure to keep everyone updated in little videos like this one on the progress. Please subscribe if you like this video, and check the link in the description to my Discord where I talk all sorts of nonsense about miniatures painting, provide critique on paint jobs, and occasionally stream.